Like every flight disaster, there wasn't a single mistake that made this night possible, but many failures in a row. Rolls-Royce's missing warning, the shortcut made by the mechanics, the manual that no one read, the checklist that the crew followed from memory, and a leak warning system that should have been installed 4 years prior, but was not. This story of Flight 236 is one of the most incredible survival stories in aviation history. When everything was over, 306 people were standing on the airbase in the Azores. Some were just looking at the ground, as if they couldn't believe there was solid ground beneath their feet. After this incident, the Transport Minister of Canada fined Air Transat the largest fine in Canadian aviation history, $250,000. Besides this, the passengers filed a class action lawsuit for $30 million. The lawsuit stated that the passengers suffered such severe trauma that they became physically ill and would probably endure the effects for the rest of their lives. After landing, Captain Pish was seen as a hero. However, after a few days, Pish's past was exposed and the media was in a state of panic. It was found out that about 20 years ago, Captain Pish was arrested for drug transport in America. He was sentenced to 5 years in Georgia, and he was pardoned only recently. This news raised the question of how an ex-drug smuggler could become a commercial airline pilot. But despite his past, he remained a hero for the passengers. But the landing of the plane was not smooth at all. Without engine reverse thrust, they needed extreme braking. The main wheels locked. The tires deflated. The wheel bearings were also damaged. The landing gear started to spark and flame. The friction caused a small fire, but fortunately, it was extinguished quickly. The landing was so violent that the passengers were thrown forward. Some people's belongings fell to the floor. And then, as soon as the plane stopped, the cabin started clapping. In less than 2 minutes, all 306 people were evacuated from the plane. Not a single person died. There were 2 serious injuries and 16 minor injuries, but they were mostly sustained during the evacuation via the slides. At 6:31 a.m., the pilots contacted Lajes approach. The plane was at 27,000 feet and Lajes was 33 nautical miles away. At 6:36 a.m., the crew saw the runway lights and reported that the plane was only 14 nautical miles away. The captain told them that they had seen the runway flashing lights from a distance and believed they had enough altitude to glide to the airport. Some passengers looked at their family photos. Some closed their eyes. A mother held her child tight. Captain Pish and co-pilot de Jager were working on the emergency checklist, preparing for the visual runway approach. Without engine power, the pilots had only one chance to land on the runway. There was no go-around option. A controlled landing of an aircraft in water is called ditching. It is one of the most dangerous emergency procedures in aviation. 95% of occupants survive the initial impact of ditching. The data shows this. But due to drowning and hypothermia, the overall survival rate falls to only 76%. The problem was that it was average data. And Flight 230 SX's case was very different from the average. The flight was flying in the dark over the Atlantic Ocean. In a night ditching, the pilots couldn't see the wave's height or surface. Apart from that, even in August, the water in the sea is so cold that people could die of hypothermia. The windows outside were black and dark. No stars, no light, no land, no signs. Just thousands of feet deep below the cold Atlantic Ocean. Passenger Margaret McKinnon remembered Ethiopian Airlines Flight 961. She saw in a documentary how, in 1996, an aircraft crashed into the Indian Ocean. It broke apart as soon as it touched the water, and everyone was killed. McKinnon knew from the documentary that there was very little chance of surviving a water crash. She accepted death, but her husband, Belgica's, refused to accept it. He planned that if they fell into the ocean, they would exit the ship and swim to the shore. They believed that even if they fell into the sea, they could swim and survive. He told McKinnon, "We'll need our shoes. We'll need our shoes." Life jackets also had problems. Some jackets had a single strap, some had 2, and passengers were unable to find the straps and the elastic bands. Many passengers were physically helped by the crew members to put on the jackets. When the crew started demonstrating emergency water landing procedures, some people started screaming. Some people turned pale, and many people started praying. Grace Romero held the hand of the passenger next to her, hoping that everything would be fine. She just wanted to avoid falling into the ocean. The captain had officially accepted that the plane might land in the sea. The flight director, who is the senior-most cabin crew member, takes out the emergency action plan checklist. The cabin crew is told to take out their life jackets and get ready for the passenger briefing. Prepare the cabin. The cabin is slowly depressurizing. We need to put our oxygen masks on. Crew members ask passengers to put on their life jackets. Instructions for the brace positions are given in English and French. There were Portuguese passengers on this flight. Some of them didn't know either language. Because of the language barrier, they were struggling to understand what was actually happening. For the next few minutes, the passengers were sitting in the dark, without an engine, gliding on the air currents. They didn't know what was below or what was going to happen next. After a while, the passengers were told that the plane might land in the sea. Everybody, please, I need your attention. We are preparing to ditch the plane. I need you to put on your life jackets right now. Augustine and Romero, both 57, heard the engines shut down and thought of their daughters, who were in Canada. The crew members were also scared. A flight attendant came to Romero and said, "Please help me. Please help me." A 24-year-old helicopter pilot trainee, Daniel Rodriguez, heard the crew members shouting at each other and the passengers. Vasco dos Santos, a student of 18 years old who was on this flight, started to recall plane crash movies he had watched in the theaters. Today, the same thing was happening to him. Captain Pish told air traffic control that they might have to land in the ocean. When the engines stopped, the cabin was suddenly covered in silence. The constant humming that is heard in the background of every aircraft had disappeared. The silence was so deep that people's ears started ringing. After both engines shut down, the plane switched to its emergency power source, RAT. The ram air turbine was automatically deployed. It is a small wind turbine that generates emergency power so that basic instruments and some hydraulic systems can operate. To operate the RAT, the minimum speed of the plane should be 140 knots. The captain now realized that if they wanted to save the lives of 305 people, they would have to land the flight safely without either engine. But in history, no commercial passenger jet had ever attempted a powerless glide this far. There was no second chance. If the plane couldn't reach the airport, it would crash into the cold waters of the Atlantic Ocean.